Good evening. It's nice to be able to join you guys tonight and to start talking about what we're going to be covering for the next week. But first, I wanted to kind of recap what the youth group has been doing for the last month. We've been talking about, or we've been going over a series on the Bible, but more specifically, why we should trust the Bible. We've gone through 4 different reasons in the past month. The first one was the profession of the Bible, which was what the Bible had to say about itself. And then we talked about the production of the Bible and how the Bible was made. We talked about the preservation of the Bible and how it's remained consistent for over 2,000 years. And then we talked last week about the prophecies in the Bible and about how Jesus meeting all of the prophecies that were mentioned in the Old Testament was basically a mathematical impossibility, but it still happened. And we talked about how all these different facts and all of these different things lead us to prove that the Bible is accurate, the Bible is truthful. And we were going to cover, we called them the 5 P's, with the profession, the production, preservation, prophecy, and then the last one that we were going to talk about tonight was your personal testimony. But obviously our plans have changed. We've had to adjust a little bit, so instead we're going to talk about another P, and that is the book of Proverbs. The adults have been going with that series for a little while now, so we're going to kind of join them, and we're going to jump in on Proverbs chapter 22 because today is the 22nd day of March. So hopefully you've been reading along in your Proverbs of the day, adults and youth alike. So we're going to jump right into Proverbs chapter 22, and the verse we're going to look at tonight is verse 13. It says, "The sluggard says, 'There's a lion outside, I'll be killed in the public square.'" So that verse is pretty short, but there's a lot of substance to it. You'll look at, you guys have probably heard the saying, excuses are like armpits. Everybody has them and they all stink, or some variation of that. But that's what Solomon is talking about right here. He's talking about excuses. He's talking about how the sluggard is making an excuse not to go to work. And the excuse that he uses, hey, there's a lion out in the street, might seem kind of ridiculous to us, but honestly, a lot of our excuses probably seem ridiculous to God all the time. So we're going to look at a few areas tonight where we might be making excuses and how we can improve on our ability to not make excuses. So the first scenario that we're going to look at is when it comes to work. So this is the scenario that Solomon talked about in this verse, and this is not the first time that the sluggard is mentioned in the book of Proverbs. It mentions the sluggard many times. You could check out chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, chapter 19, verse 24, chapter 20, verse 4, chapter 21, 25, and so on. There's a lot of times in this book where it talks about being lazy or being a sluggard. And obviously when the Bible mentions something more than once, it's important. So we should really take note of this. And this is something that I've kind of dealt with. When I was a kid, I used to make excuses all the time when before wrestling practice or before I had to go mow lawns with my dad. I would make up the excuse that my stomach hurt so I wouldn't have to go do it. Thankfully, my dad saw through my excuses and he made me go anyways. And it's made me a better worker now. It's improved my work ethic now, and as an adult I see that. But oftentimes we make these excuses to get out of work. So Andy and I are going to have a little piece of paper or a little questionnaire type thing prepared for you, and there's going to be some verses that I would like for you guys to look up and some questions that we would like for you to answer. So look into those, but we're going to move on to the second thing, second topic that we make excuses for, and that is sin. So I have siblings. Most of you guys know that, and one thing that is constant among all families that have siblings is those siblings like to play the blame game. Nothing is ever your fault, you know. So when you would break something or hurt someone, you would always blame it on the other person. That's just how it works, and that's what we do as people often too. From the beginning of time, you look at Adam and Eve. When God came to the garden and he called Adam and Eve on their sin, immediately Adam goes, "It wasn't me, it was Eve." And Eve says, "It wasn't me, it was the snake." It's been happening for years, guys. We've been making excuses and we've been trying to evade taking responsibility for our sin. So I encourage you, don't deflect that responsibility. Don't deflect that blame. The best way to start overcoming sin is by accepting the fact that you are a sinner. So talk about that a little bit amongst your family. The last thing that we're going to talk about tonight is making excuses when it comes to accepting Christ. And this is probably the biggest one. And I know a lot of the people that I'm probably talking to right now, you've accepted Christ, but still this applies to you in some way. In Luke, I'm not sure, I don't remember what passage, but Jesus says that you're going to make there's going to be people that make excuses not to join the kingdom of heaven. And I'll have that passage for you on the paper. But that just breaks my heart, that people are going to hear the good news of Christ and not want to join his kingdom. They're going to make excuses not to follow God. And the thing is, they might be making those excuses because they think that, hey, my life's going to get a lot harder if I choose to follow Christ. Hey, I might face persecution. These things I'm not going to be able to do anymore, these things that I enjoy. But trust me, even though all those things might happen, your life might be tougher because of it, it is so, so worth it. And that's just what I wanted to encourage you guys with as we we finish this little video. I want to encourage you, Jesus is worth it. Following Jesus is worth it. And during this time where a lot of stuff is changing and where we could possibly be making a lot of excuses right now, we need to stand by Jesus, realize that he's worth it, and be a light to our community during this tough time and not make excuses. And just remember, like I said again, Jesus is worth it. The last thing that I want to kind of draw attention to before we finish the video, we are thinking, or we're going to start this little community building exercise, I guess, and there's going to be more information about this on the little questionnaire that you'll see, but we're going to have a trick shot contest. So when it comes to basketball, soccer, baseball, just really any sort of trick shot, we're going to ask you guys to send some videos of the trick shots while you're at home this week, because you're not going to have a whole lot else to do. So you do these trick shots, send them in to us, and we'll choose a winner for you next Sunday. But that's all I have, so see ya.